Prague is one of the most mysterious cities in Europe, but is it just a facade, or does it really conceal something truly sinister? Today we're gonna explore one of Prague's most enigmatic areas. I'm gonna share blood-chilling tales and urban legends with you. Let's go! We are starting our today's walk at dusk because I wouldn't dare to visit this place at night. Firstly, because it's a bit dodgy, and secondly, because there's no street lamp, so you wouldn't be able to see anything there anyway. I know it doesn't look the part, but this is actually our most ancient stop today. In the pagan times, there used to be a sacred grove dedicated to the Slavic goddess of winter and death, Morena, aka Morana. There's just a little patch of forest up there on a cliff, but back in the olden days, this is where the sacrifices to Morena were made. You know, the good old... that kind of stuff. Nowadays, nothing reminds us of the dark history except the name of the nearby tram stop. And this is where our next creepy site is located. This beautiful Baroque house is known as the Faust's house. This name might ring a bell. Faust is famous thanks to Goethe's work, but he was a mystical figure that historians still struggle to put a face to. There are at least 3 men who are suspected of being the real Dr. Faust. Perhaps you think that at least one of them lived in this house and that's how the house received its name. No, but somebody else did live here. His name was Edward Kelly. Edward Kelly was an English alchemist, even though some people might just call him a charlatan, who was working for the Czech king and Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. Edward Kelly was conducting alchemistic experiments, trying to brew the elixir of eternal life, talking to angels, and having other peculiar hobbies. In 1590, he purchased this house and set up an alchemistic laboratory in its basement, and you can still find the frescoes from that time there. But just a year later, Kelly was arrested and sent to prison in Křivoklát Castle, which we visited in this video. 200 years later, another person who was interested in peculiar sciences, called Ferdinand Mladota, moved in here. He and his son were also conducting experiments that were raising eyebrows of people back in the day. Because for them, of course, it had nothing to do with science, but with Satan's tricks. All of the 3 men were suspected of selling their soul to the devil, just like Faust did when he struck a deal with Mephistopheles. In a bizarre turn of events, a devilish incident did occur in this house on February 14th, 1945, during the Anglo-American air raid of Prague. A bomb fell through the roof of the Fas house straight to the alchemist's basement and did not explode. Some people believe that the bomb did not detonate because the house is magically protected by 7 cats who were walled up here alive. As we are now walking through the streets of the new town, I should share this curious fact with you. Despite what the name suggests, Newtown isn't actually new. It was founded in the 14th century by Charles IV, Bohemian king, Holy Roman Emperor, and apparently a very good urban developer. Charles IV was convinced that Prague will witness the second coming of Christ, so he thought that the apocalypse is gonna happen right over here. So he wanted to be prepared for that and built the new town. He based Newtown on the old maps of Jerusalem that were apparently brought by the Crusaders. I'm sure they were highly accurate. One curious thing about this part of the new town is that Charles IV built 5 churches here, and if you would manage to look at them from above, you will discover that they all stand on the shape of a cross. Each church is connected to some significant event in the monarch's life, and the church over here, the Church of St. Catherine of Alexandria, is connected to the day when Charles IV almost died in a battle. He was wounded, but managed to survive and vouched to build a church and dedicate it to the saint on whose day it happened, which happened to be St. Catherine of Alexandria. The thin Gothic tower of this church has long been used by Prague mothers to scare their children. You see that thin tower, child? If you will misbehave, I will send you to St. Catherine. Why would they say that? Because the territory of this church has been used by Prague Psychiatric Ward since 1822. perhaps the most famous patient of the psychiatric ward was a Czech composer Bedřich Smetana. Smetana had many health issues over the course of his life, but towards the end of it, he started to have hallucinations, refused to eat, couldn't recognize members of his family, and was breaking stuff in his apartment. Just a couple days after he was admitted to the St. Catherine's Insane Asylum, he died with a diagnosis of paranoia. Historians and doctors debate the real cause of Smetana's health problems still today, and it seems like they separated into two camps. One believes that Smetana had syphilis, and another is convinced that he had osteomyelitis. We are now standing at the spot where a legendary Prague pub called Poisonous Hut used to be located. Now there's just this very basic functionalist building instead of it. Legend says that this pub was established in 13th century and was frequented by the Czech king Wenceslas IV, who would never pass on the opportunity of having a good party and a drink. At the time of Wenceslas IV, this pub was just known as At the Vineyard. One night Wenceslas came here with his hangman, I know, weird company for a party, and discovered that he recognizes two people in the crowd. These were his assassins who tried to poison him in Vienna. That's when Wenceslas probably thought to himself, it's good that I brought a hangman with me, and sent him to poison them. The killers died the same night, and the pub received its legendary name, Poisonous Hut. The second version of the name origin is as follows. This pub was frequented by the locals, who were patients of the nearby asylum, who would sneak out at night together with their nurses, and also students of the medical faculty that is located nearby, who would have access to medicine and poisons. Poisonous Hut. One of its owners was so cheap, he didn't want to spend any money on the dishes, which was frequently stolen by his customers. So he decided to carve little pits in the tables and pour soup and other food that they would serve for very cheap there. And if you're wondering about the spoons, those were chained to each seat. So there was really zero chance of theft there. Obviously, it wasn't very sanitary because after each customer, they would just wipe it with the same wipe and voila. Next. It is also rumored that Poisonous Hut did hold some promiscuous raves in the past days. The last owner of the Poisonous Hut was warned by his friends that it is cursed, but he didn't listen and bought it anyway. He died half a year later. Just across the road from the Poisonous Hut, we have the regional maternity hospital that looks straight from the Victorian Gothic novel, even though it is not, it is Czech. Some of you might recognize it from this movie with Johnny Depp, but even in reality, this place had a dark history. In 19th century, it was a fine establishment that not only helped mothers to start new families, but also provided alternative options for those who did not want to have kids. There was a secret wing in the hospital with a separate entrance where women could bring unwanted kids. And rich women could also give birth not to ruin their reputation and leave their kids there to get adopted, hopefully. Our last story brings us on the very edge of the new town to the Church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary in Charlemagne. During the 7 Years' War, this church was bombed by the Prussian army from across the valley, hence the 11 cannonballs that can still be found in the walls of that church. The towers of the church were destroyed, but the vault miraculously survived, and that's perhaps because it is protected by magic. According to a popular legend, when the church was finally finished and the builders were burning the wooden scaffolding, in the smoke and fire, a grimace of a devil appeared and scared all of the people present there. But the person who was scared the most was the architect of the church. He fled the construction site and later was found dead. People speculated that he sold his soul to the devil for the vault of the church to hold. And maybe it worked too well. Well, dear viewers, I hope you are truly spooked out, and I will see you in our next video.